All right, we'll get started in just a minute here. Just going to wait for some folks to come on and join us. All right. Okay, I think we can get started. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Today I am joined by Kelly from Tech Ladies, and we are going to talk to you all about building inclusive tech teams and what that looks like in 2024. So without further ado, I am Courtney. I'm the lead product manager at Diversio. We spend a lot of time in employee data, and so I am always looking towards how we can use analytics and figure out what's going on in specific companies in order to make workplaces more inclusive and promote diversity. And over to you, Kelly.
Great. I'm Kelly Jamison. I am a career coach and hiring specialist. So, for the past couple of years, I have been working with Tech Ladies and supporting our partner companies source and recruit diverse talent. And I'm hoping today to bring not only kind of the institutional Tech Ladies knowledge about how to support tech companies, but also as a career coach, I have specifically worked with individuals with disabilities, women transitioning into tech, and also kind of anyone coming from a non-traditional background into tech. So through that, I've accumulated a lot of stories, some good, some bad, about how people have felt supported or not through the recruitment process, and even once they are on their job, how they feel supported within their role. So I am super excited to kind of share all of those learnings with you on behalf of Tech Ladies, and excited to be here with Courtney and partnering with Diversio.
Awesome. All right. So today we're going to cover quite a few things. We're going to talk about why diversity matters in tech. We're going to touch a little bit on unconscious bias, and then we're going to get into some more tangible actions that people can take away. So inclusive hiring practices, how you foster diverse workplace culture, and then retention strategies, which I know is definitely top of mind for people given the climate in tech and the workforce in general. So let's jump right in. Why is diversity important in tech? What is the reason? And so some things that we like to talk about at Diversio, and then I think Kelly also has a great perspective here, is that we want to make inclusive diversity a priority. So it's not just about the hiring of diverse folks, but it's about what do we do next? And so a little bit about why this is important. We want to build these workplaces to make sure that everybody feels like they can belong, because the last thing you want to do is go through all of these different steps, recruit some diverse folks, and then have them leave because they don't feel like they can actually show up as their full self in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think focusing on retention is right, not just about keeping like a rear end and a seat on the job, but also supporting that person so that they can thrive within the role and really add the most value in a way that they feel supported.
Absolutely. So what does diversity actually look like? Diversity can come in many forms. I think everyone's probably quite comfortable with, standard race and ethnicity definitions, gender diversity, but we also have all sorts of things around experiential diversity, situational identity, and then back down to personal. So we're all comprised of different elements. We all can bring different diverse factors to the table. And so to look into what these are a little bit more as an example, situational covers things that position us and shape our decision-making process. So your previous experience, your job level, management status, what you do for a living. But then we have experiential, like where did you come from? Your socioeconomic status can fall into here, the languages that you speak, your educational background, things like religion, your parents, your parental status or your marital status can also fall into here. And then we have things around identity, which is more what we're used to when we talk about diversity, which is things like your physical ability, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, etc. So over to Kelly for a second, just to talk about the benefits of diverse tech teams.
Yeah, so I mean, I can acknowledge that you are all here, I would guess, because you already kind of know the benefits. But it's fun to look at these actual statistics. And I would say, like, Diversio is so great to get all these numbers for us. They appreciate it. But if you see this, like, 40% of employees, they expect an inclusive and diverse workplace. About 75% said they wanted to work for an organization that makes a positive contribution to society, right? I think a lot of people are really not only looking at the role itself, but also the company and if it matches their values. As well as 50% of workplaces with inclusive cultures, they see a 50% decrease in turnover risk within their teams, which obviously is a great, like, bottom line business decision, right? To keep your employees there and not have to go through the cost or effort, expense, et cetera, of rehiring talent that you can't retain.
Absolutely, which leads super well into what those business impacts actually look like. So, we know what employees are looking for when they join a company, but how does this actually benefit the employer? Because we want this to be a two-way street. And so, companies that are in the top quartile for having ethnic and cultural diversity in their organization, they actually outperform in profitability 36% of the time. In that top quartile for gender diversity, they're 25% more likely to have higher profits. So if we combine the two with ethnic and gender diversity, we're doing really, really well compared to our competitors. And then we also can see that revenue increases as well. So not just profitability, focused on revenue. Basically, what we're saying here is if you promote and include diversity in your teams, you actually see this translated to bottom line. You're going to have people who question the way that other people think, bring more creative ideas, problem solve more uniquely from each other, and all of that translates to business growth. And so, sort of to tie these two elements together, one of the things that can be really important when we're talking about having those diverse teams and then making them feel included is that we actually understand what it takes to make those employees feel included. So we know that we can retain this talent and we can have that translate to our bottom line in terms of how we grow as a business. But how do we get there? We have to understand how all of these diverse employees are experiencing the workplace differently. And then we can loop it back to retaining those folks. So if we understand what we can do to make sure that people feel included, we don't have to worry about retention in the same way as if we're just treating everybody the same. All right, so going to take a quick little detour into unconscious bias. I imagine that most of us on the call are probably quite familiar with what this looks like, but just want to make sure that we can set the stage and have a really open conversation throughout the rest of the presentation today. So unconscious bias could look a little bit differently at work than it might in other places, but it's about the attitudes, beliefs, and social stereotypes that influence our understanding, actions, and decisions. And it often results in the favoring of certain individuals or groups without conscious awareness. I think the thing that I want to focus on here is that unconscious bias is something that affects us really sort of unintentionally. We're not going out into the world and saying, I'm going to treat X person differently because of X characteristic. We're all raised in different environments that bring certain opinions, and those can be positive opinions, negative opinions, but they all are part of us as human beings. And so it's really important to sort of understand what this looks like for yourself and seek out education in terms of how you have unconscious bias so that you can maybe not necessarily remove it, but have it not control you, have it not control your thoughts and decisions. Like I said, we all have them. It impacts how we perceive others, and it makes you human. There's nothing wrong with having an unconscious bias. It's just more important to know how it affects your decision-making process. So to tie it into what we're doing here with inclusive hiring, we want to make sure that we're not allowing our biases to dictate the hiring process. So sometimes we can see this show up with different names in resumes. We can see this that show up where that's impacting whether or not somebody is getting a second interview, a first interview, based off of the name that they're seeing on the resume. And then we can also see that like this causes people to sometimes use nicknames. So really the first element here as a barrier in terms of how people are making decisions is that you could take one look at somebody's name and make a snap decision. And because we're not really looking at resumes for, 10 minutes, that snap judgment is something that it's really important to tune in on and avoid making. And we'll talk a little bit later on about some strategies for how we can overcome this. There's also, once we're in more of the employment stage of things, there can be unconscious bias in feedback, and this shows up a little bit differently. This could be more about, people make perceptions and have perceptions about those that they work with that might just be founded in a feeling or an observation. And so it's really important to be intentional when doing feedback collection. So we want to have people self-reflect and make sure that there is objectiveness in providing that feedback and not just in that, okay, I took some time, I'm paying attention to what's going on, and I'm going to, make sure that this is an intentional exercise, but sort of take a step back and say, am I being objective when I'm presenting this information to the person I'm giving feedback to? And a second, more detailed part of that process for yourself could be focusing on whether or not you would give the same criticism to somebody of a similar background. And so if you're going to provide feedback, everyone's heard this one before about somebody being bossy in the workplace, consider whether or not that's a similar feedback that you would give to a male colleague where perhaps you ranked everything else about these two folks in a very similar way. So we want to make sure that we're not falling into different stereotypes as we're going through this process. Okay, so now we're going to give a little bit more of a practical approach as we talk about some inclusive hiring practices. Hopefully, these are things that you all can take away and implement into your own organizations. And so, when we talk about inclusive hiring, we want to have a focus around accessibility. And so, this means that things require that are found in job descriptions or are part of your requirements can be reached and entered by all groups of people. We want to make sure that we're accessible, unbiased, equitable, and welcoming. Why is this important? We want, touched on this sort of at the beginning, but we want to reemphasize that, employees are seeking this out and employers are benefiting from following these practices. So, we're more likely to surpass peers if we're in the top performing quartile for racial and ethnic diversity. We're able to save money if we're creating inclusive policies around LGBTQ staff. And we have incredibly higher, much higher levels of employee engagement. So those diverse employees who are hired with all of these promises, they actually engage and feel very seen and valued when employers are essentially putting their money where their mouth is. They're making sure that these folks are accessing opportunities the same way and that they're creating an environment where everybody feels welcome.
I love this slide, especially if there are some of you attending who might not be kind of in the position to totally overhaul your practices and you want to have something persuasive to show to those who are. I think sometimes these bottom line stats of essentially like if your competitor is really employing these inclusive hiring practices and they're getting access to top talent faster and they're seeing better results, your company or organization could be behind. So although it would be ideal to be in a world where we don't have to make these nudges or these business cases of why inclusive hiring is important, the reality is sometimes we do. And to be able to come with these statistics, I think is super powerful. Okay. So, what can I do? These are kind of the tangible pieces. So, starting at the very top of building your pipeline with inclusive candidate sourcing. So, we really want to broaden the way we think about finding candidates. I think the first step here is avoiding referral programs. I know that there are benefits of getting someone in quick that's vetted, but often same results in same, right? So we are more likely to recruit someone who has a similar background to us, right? So that's going to inhibit the ability to reverse people different from us, et cetera, the people that are in the company. I think it's also really important to review and evaluate your application process of how you are expecting people to apply. There can even be barriers if you're thinking about it. This is just one example, but if someone is visually impaired and they're using a screen reader and your application process results requires them to go through like multiple layers of clicks, like you're clicking here, it's taking you to another page where you have to refer to the job number, the job title, etc. As they're getting further down the line, it can be a barrier to entry. Also, I know if there is an overload of applicants, if you're only reviewing the first, X number, does that exclude anyone? Is it hard for someone to apply within a certain time frame? So can you reevaluate that? Um, what I get really excited about is being really explicit to your commitment to diversity. So proving it essentially. Can you prove it on your website? Can you talk about your values? If you have already built a diverse team, you should show that so that people can see others that look like them and feel more comfortable applying. Also, I think it's important to broaden the way that you are posting jobs. So you can do that by partnering with niche communities. So this is going to allow you to kind of meet people where they're at. So instead of just kind of posting on LinkedIn or larger job boards, could you think about, you know, a community of women in tech, like tech ladies, and connect with people there. And there's creative ways to do it too. So you're building rapport and trust within the communities. So this can look like whether you're sharing content, whether you're joining events, supporting events, or even just posting on the niche job boards, is going to kind of increase the amount of people that you can reach from different backgrounds. Okay, so another piece, I know Courtney did a really nice job of pointing out the biases that we can see even just on resumes, whether it's the name, et cetera. So it was actually a practice of resume blinding. So it's where you remove information from a candidate's resume that might reveal their identity. So it can be anything from their name, their address, even the college that they went to. There are, some tools that you can use, but it kind of depends on the needs of your organization. Some of these tools that will automatically kind of block out any revealing information, they can be pricey. So, I mean, you can also just literally have someone come in and remove this information. So now you can see on this slide that the kind of revealing information is out, so you can really focus on the accomplishments of this person. Great. All right. So another really important piece is the job description, right? We don't want to discourage anyone from applying based on the words that we write in the job description. So we really want to make sure that using gender neutral language, avoiding phrases that might deter any underrepresented groups. Regarding the gender language, I like to think that, society is moving towards a place where maybe we don't think that there are words that are gendered, but I think the reality is a lot of people based on their background are socialized in a different way that they may or may not identify with certain words. So even ones that sound kind of like catchy and fun, like ninja or rock star, might actually deter some women from applying. So I want to be really intentional about our language. And then in addition to that, you really want to share what you have to offer. So even before you start outlining the specific role and requirements, spend a little bit of time like showing off your company's mission, your project, your culture, so people know what they're going into. Also thinking about years of experience. So here's an example that I really like. So replacing something like 2 years of experience with relevant work experience in, and then being specific about where you want the experience in. So B2B sales role, where you're responsible for generating leads and pitching products and services. Because that just adds a little bit more specificity to it, right? Than the general, like just B2B sales. So people don't have to do any guessing, and they can think about even transferable skills that they have developed, and they know what you want, and so that they can adjust themselves there. So also, I know this is a big hot topic, but degree requirements versus skill requirements. Do you really need a degree for the role just because it's been that way? Does it have to continue to be that way? So things like replacing a computer science degree with what you actually need the candidate to know. So a solid understanding of object-oriented programming. So the role requirements. This is, I think, a really interesting thing where we don't just want to go back and like copy and paste old things. I think each role posted, people need to come together and think about what is actually necessary for someone to succeed in this role, right? So asking, could an otherwise great candidate succeed in this role without this? And if the answer is yes, right, it's not a requirement. And if it's not a requirement, it should be removed entirely. Or we can also split it up into two sections. So you can have your requirements, the things that you and your team have decided are like vital to success in the role, and also have some like nice to haves or like kind of wants essentially, or just have fewer requirements. A big thing that we see in our population is pay transparency. So this helps reduce the gender pay gap if it is clear what everyone is getting paid. Helps you stay compliant with a growing number of equal pay legislations, all good cases. But frankly, a lot of people that I have worked with have limited time when they're applying to jobs. So they don't have the time, whether it's because they're the primary caretaker or they are balancing a current role. They don't have time to go through extensive hiring processes only to learn that the pay isn't what they need for their life. And so I have people that will not, clients that won't even apply to roles if there's no pay transparency. Another big thing is really outlining the perks and benefits. And this is a chance where you can really prove your value, right? Do you have parental leave? Do you have like stipends for professional development? Do you have contribution matching so that people can give to causes that are important to them, that support their identity, and you can back it up there? Okay, this is one of my favorite ones, so I think it was the longest, but I'm glad that I could spend some time there, so thank you. All right, and then once you get people in the door, you've got this diverse pipeline, you need to go through the interview process. So the biggest thing is standardization. You want to make sure that the questions that you're asking, each question supports a specific goal, right? So even in the job description, you're thinking about what is actually required for this job. Take those requirements, develop questions that assess those requirements, and make sure that you're asking everyone the same questions. And these need to be designed to assess the candidate's skills instead of really looking at their background or identity. So it's nice to also think about the behavioral style question. So tell me about a time when you displayed the skill that we need. But I think also putting a focus on how would you handle this is going to be a really nice way to allow someone to see what they can contribute without having to rely on what their background has afforded them the opportunity to prove with a specific title, right? Because we want to look at those transferable skills. Also, it's really important to take notes and grade on a rubric. Courtney did a nice job of talking about unconscious bias, right? We know it's there. And so to be able to give ourselves a tool to try to be more objective is going to be important. So that way you are actually looking at, for each question, for each quality, how do you think this person is doing? So another super interesting topic, and I might throw it out to the chat, but is an interview panel. I feel like I have just seen a lot of pros and cons here. I have seen some people that specialize in diversity and inclusion in the hiring process think that panels might be a nice way to avoid a singular bias, right? To avoid just one person having their own thoughts impact their perception of the person that they are interviewing. Um, and so the idea would be that if you can offer a diverse panel, you will have a diverse perspective of this person and not rely on one. The cons of a panel are, I mean, first and foremost, like the applicant experience. So I don't know if even any of you in the chat like have been in a panel interview, have enjoyed what it's like to be on the receiving end of a panel interview. But I know for a lot of the clients that I work with as a coach, it's a pretty intimidating process. And especially if you are coming from a diverse background, if the panel is full of people that don't look like you, don't sound like you, don't have the same background of you, it can feel incredibly isolating. To combat this, a lot of companies might try to essentially have someone from a diverse background serve on this panel. And that can backfire in some ways if that person ends up being like the sole representative of diversity, showing up on panel after panel after panel, what that does to that employee and that retention. So if a panel interview is important to your process, I would say making sure that you're avoiding kind of the side talk, the side chats, the side glances, still using a rubric. And although it's hard, avoiding sort of the debrief at the end, because that's can result in a lot of groupthink about when people are essentially talking about their gut feeling. And I think in an interview, that's a little bit what we want to avoid. I think if we rely on a gut feeling versus these more as objective as we can be, grading on a rubric someone's performance or their ability to take on this role can result in a little more bias. Which kind of brings me to avoiding chit chat. And this means not just with kind of if you're doing a panel interview, your fellow employees, but also with the candidate themselves. Um, you know, obviously we want to be friendly and have a welcoming experience, but I think sometimes chit chat can kind of lead into like revelations of someone's background that maybe aren't relevant to the role, but might have an influence in sort of our unconscious decisions. So staying to the standardized questions and avoiding chit chat is going to help prevent that.
Yeah. And I think with this last one, it sort of touches on maybe the elements of diversity that we think about less. Like if somebody is introverted and they prefer to work a little bit more quietly, and that doesn't stand in their way of accomplishing any of the job duties that are laid out, this person might not come off the same as the extroverted person who's making small talk, asking you about the weather, your trips, how your week's going. There's not really anything inherently different about those two people's skill sets, but that really gets at the heart of like that gut feeling, not taking notes and trying to figure out how you felt about somebody rather than what can they actually bring to the table.
Yeah, that's great. And then one note before we move on too, I think the interview process is an ideal time to offer accommodations before a potential candidate has to ask for them. I think that proves your commitment. So, phone interviews could be great, but maybe someone needs an accommodation or is going to be better in person, whether it's just like for lip reading or access to a quiet space, etc. And so being able to be proactive and to work with someone and to not have to go through kind of a regimented like system of how to interview them and kind of meet them where they're at with their needs.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay, so we've covered quite a lot of information about the hiring process, and now we want to connect the dots a little bit. And now that you've gotten these folks in the door, how do we make sure that we're retaining and promoting that diverse workplace culture? So if anyone has any questions about the section we just went over, feel free to leave them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll definitely get to those at the end. We're not ignoring you, but we're going to step into the what's next element here. So we have more statistics for you all. These are very helpful. Like Kelly said earlier, if you're the advocate for these processes, we have to remind everyone that leaders set the tone for the company. So it's very well and good to have diversity coming in at the bottom of your funnel for employees, perhaps at sort of like the more entry level positions. But like Kelly was mentioning, even with the interview panels, if you only have one diverse person in a leadership position or who could even sit on some of those panels, that really shows that, there's not necessarily a tone being set that's permeating throughout the whole company. And the other half of this is it really does benefit the organization. I know we shared some things at the beginning here, but we have, a 45% higher likelihood of growing in market share. We have companies that are getting higher margins. That fancy little acronym, for those who might not know, just stands for the income that you have before taxes. But we also have a deeper understanding. So if there is a team member who is joining, is new to the team, regardless of what level they are, if they have somebody else in the company that looks like them, then they're going to have their needs met more easily. There's going to be somebody who understands them. And that just sort of continues to circularly foster a culture where we have all sorts of different people who feel welcome, included, and understood. And then they're able to do better work because they don't have to have sort of an insecurity about whether or not they belong in that workplace. And so if we want this tone to start at the top, we have to talk a little bit about what building inclusive leadership looks like. A really big part at the beginning here is education and understanding your own biases. And you have to really know what you don't know. And so we talked a lot about this at the beginning, but it's a very personal journey for most people. And it's also one that should be approached without judgment or shame because you don't know what you don't know. And there's nothing wrong with starting and learning and figuring out how your upbringing, your own diverse factors, or your role in a certain company has influenced the way that you're interacting with other people. And so once you have sort of this foundational element of yourself, it's very easy to start helping other team members and understanding where gaps may lie for the rest of the company. It's good to start setting regular check-ins, create anonymous 360 feedback. So that's upward feedback, making sure that, we're not just telling our direct reports how to improve, but we're also able to give feedback to our managers and say, hey, I would really like to see this from you. And then we can also sort of solidify this process by setting expectations and making sure that we're sharing how things can be improved over time. So it has us in a little bit of a line here, but you can almost think of it a little bit more as a circle in that, once you have that foundation, it's important for this to be iterative and then open to feedback from new joiners, current joiners, people above, and people below you. And so what are some ways that we can build this connection and comfort? Because it's very well and good to say that, tone set at the top, we have this feedback culture, but how do we actually do this in a way that is meaningful to folks? And so there's a couple of different options. We know that there's organizations that are virtual, hybrid, in person, regardless of how you're operating, these all have merit. So you could do a virtual lunch and a coffee chat, or you could do those in person if that's your office style. But some of the things that we want to work around, you'll see these unconscious biases sort of sitting below these examples. And so promoting these connection times as a company is a really good way for people to start to see each other more as humans rather than anything else and get more comfortable interacting with, collaborating with, and really just, communicating with anybody that looks a little bit different from them. So those lunches and coffee chats are really valuable because a lot of the times men are feeling that it's inappropriate to have lunch with a woman colleague. So creating that professional environment where they can get to know each other as people and not feel weird about it is a very powerful thing. Networking and industry events, we have a similar discomfort around those events. And so we want to make sure that we're providing that environment where we can work through that discomfort. And then we get to something about mentorship programs. We're sort of seeing the opposite effect where junior women are reluctant to seek out the mentorship of a man. And this could come from a variety of factors that we probably don't have time to get into today, but creating some sort of a partnership mentorship program where there are connections that are built based off of a mutual goal career development, past experience, how that can support what somebody who's more junior is looking for is a much better way of building these programs. And then lastly, we have employee resource groups. And really the benefit here is that this can serve as both a place of connection and a place of education. And we're going to get into a little bit more about ERGs in just a few slides. So we want to tie this into our retention strategies. We have talked about inclusive hiring, we've talked about how we can build that workforce, and now we want to make sure that we're retaining all of our diverse employees through different inclusion techniques. So we're going to open up to the chat if anyone wants to talk about a time that they had a really well-run ERG. What stood out about it? What was the good? Did you have really good programming? Was there education, fun activities, not too much pressure? If anyone's ever had a really good experience being a part of one or even attending an event that was led by an ERG, feel free to share with us now. If not, Kelly, have you ever been a part of an ERG?
Yes. So yeah, one for women in tech.
Shocking.
Shocking. I know, right? What? But what I really appreciated is that they had really low commitment ways for people to get involved and to feel heard. So they had a book club, but found very quickly that some of these like dense, heavy books were not being read. So they would give us links to podcasts or even just short articles. And so it was a very like low commitment way to kind of read something and then to open up discussions. And so they would have just these little chats and they would invite anyone who wanted to come and we would just sit down and essentially have a chat about it. And I feel like it was nice because it helped people feel heard. And there was a specific thing to talk about, right? Because I've also attended some where people just kind of like sit around and they don't know, they don't have specific goals set. They're not sure like why they're meeting or what the purpose is. So
Yeah,
I love that hook to get people involved.
yeah, absolutely.
What about you, Courtney?
So I have not been a part of a formal ERG, but I have been a part of a little bit of a less formal one. At Diversio, we have one around LGBTQ employees. We're not a very large company, but I would say, are about 50 to 60% LGBTQ. And so the really nice part of this for us was you didn't have to be out to be in this ERG. You didn't have to share anything. Obviously, you were out with the people in the ERG, but you didn't have to be out more broadly in the company. And so it was really just created a space where people who were of a similar background could relate to each other. They could just ask each other questions, but there was also just a sense of comfort of like, oh, I'm in a workplace where this is okay to be. And I think that was just a really low level, organization. There wasn't really a lot of commitment. We weren't trying to get out there and educate the rest of our company, but we were providing a place where people could really be themselves fully at work.
I love that. Good.
Oh, we have a couple comments here. Ariana ran her former company's culture committee and loved the opportunities to showcase employee recognition, heritage, and company connections. I think that's a really powerful part of ERGs is when you can show people the beautiful part of your culture. I think that's something that, a lot of times these can come from perhaps a little bit more of a negative place, but when you can take the beauty of why are all of these people together, what do they have in common, and what really awesome elements of their culture are they teaching everybody else, I think that's always really well received. Awesome.
Then did we see Kate had one as
Oh,
well?
yeah, so Kate had at an internship a mini ERG for the interns, yeah. And that allowing for social events and mentorships from leaders in the org is really cool to hear what interns were doing outside of that people that they were directly working with. I think that is probably a very common group that happens. I know I had a similar experience when I was an intern as well. And I think that's really powerful because you're teaching people how to approach leadership teams. And you're saying like, this is not a scary figure. This is a person that I can come to and learn from and ask questions and make myself feel more heard and valued at the company, even as an intern. Okay, so we touched on a few of these just from talking about our own experiences, but the long and short of it is that everybody benefits from an ERG. When a company is able to have these, whether they're formal, informal, whether they're in charge of, promoting education, raising awareness, being advocates, or just promoting general inclusion, everybody is winning from having an ERG at their organization. And so then a little bit about mentorship. Has anyone, we can come back to this at the end, but if anyone's ever been a part of a really awesome mentorship program, feel free to shout it out. I think in our virtual world, it is often one of the things that is harder to build, especially for people younger in their careers. And so if you've ever used an organization, had a lot of success, feel free to share some resources for other folks in the chat. And this is really important for fostering professional development and positive company culture. It really makes sure that everybody has a good idea of what does my career progression look like? How should I be engaging with leadership? How should I be managing people? And if you create a program that matches folks with similar experience, different levels of diversity, you're really creating an opportunity for everyone to learn from each other and figure out like, how do I get really good at this specific career path?
Yeah, and I have a note here that I have seen. One of my friends is involved in an organization, and I love the way their mentorship program is set up. And it is a big company, so I think it only works for larger companies. But each employee has a mentor, but it's like related to their so similar roles, but actually in a slightly different department. So that way, your mentor is sort of outside of your direct reporting line. So it's very like comforting for her because if she is having challenges or wants to talk about like career progression or promotion and wants to bounce it off of a trusted person before actually going to her direct supervisor, it's helpful to kind of have someone that has the internal knowledge of the company, has the like motivation to mentor and support a person, but maybe isn't kind of their direct report. And I just thought that was a lovely structure for a mentorship program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it works both ways too. I had a mentor recently say to me that she really enjoys mentoring product managers when they're early on in their career because she manages them. And so she can get very candid feedback about like what are the challenges that you're facing in your career and apply that to her own direct reports. So mentorship isn't just for the mentee, it can also be very valuable for the mentor. And so when we're talking about building out this inclusive mentorship program, there's definitely a lot of strategies. I would say really the most important elements here are to be very intentional and identify what the goals and objectives are, have different structures in place for matching, make sure that you're providing training and resources for anyone that is a new mentor, and then make sure that you're actively collecting feedback from both the mentors and the mentees. You want to make sure that this is a program that serves everybody who's participating in it. So another thing we have as a strategy for how to maintain this inclusive and diverse culture and retain your employees is something called an anonymous reporting system. And so this really circles back to the intention we're putting behind feedback collection. Adding an anonymous layer is a very, very easy way to make something inclusive because you're eliminating any risk that employees might feel or any hesitation that they have around submitting feedback in an honest way. And so for employees, you can make sure that they're heard and valued. And this really promotes that culture of openness. You're really saying, we want to hear how you feel about working here. And then for organizations, it allows them to understand how people feel about working there and make intentional decisions. So we're not just making decisions based off of what we know. Going back to that unconscious bias piece, we're making them based off of the factual experiences that our employees are having. So
Right.
we also, go ahead.
Right. So for career development plans, you want to actually invest in these career development programs. I mean, both kind of a time and even a slight financial investment here. So, in addition to the mentorship programs, you want to figure out ways that you can help your employees grow so that you can retain them. And I think the most important part of that is to avoid a one size fits all, right? Everyone has their own needs, their own goals. So working together to actually define the goals with that specific employee. A key to doing this successfully is to offer flexibility around the content, right? Making sure, if they do want to go for further education or just expand their knowledge, you can think about delivery methods, right? It can be that you're sponsoring someone to go to a large conference that's related to what they want to learn about, which can be a great way to network and to learn. Um, but also, it can be like simpler things as far as webinars or even podcasts or different ways that they can get information, right? Not everyone is going to have the time to take a large professional development trip, like especially if they're the primary caretaker for their family. So they may need more flexibility there. And then I think the constant communication is to just assess and reassess the effectiveness of the plan. So, especially if you have a strong mentorship program in place to tie in the mentor into the career development plan, is also a really nice tie in as well.
Absolutely. And career development is one of the hardest things that our organizations that we work with regularly struggle with. And so it's definitely something that is really, really desired by employees, but it is tough. So going through and being flexible and trying to figure out what works for each individual is very valuable. We have a couple of other suggestions for how you can keep folks engaged and included. Things like professional development stipends, family leave policies, remote or hybrid work, flexible working hours, sort of setting, a core hour policy and providing flexibility around that, accommodations for childcare pickups, for example. So there's lots of different things that can be done to make sure that employees with different needs feel like they're welcome to be a full person at your workplace.
Yeah, and I think, I touched on this briefly, sorry, with the job descriptions, because a lot of times people use these as selling points. But to go the extra mile to make sure that people are actually taking advantage of these things and have the access and the ability to do so. Because I know some people have felt like, oh, all of these lovely perks were advertised me, but once I'm in the job, I actually feel like it's kind of discouraged for me to, have flexible working hours, or it's discouraged for me to do these things that were sort of sold to me. So make sure, especially if you are promoting them in the job description in the recruitment process, that you're upholding your commitment to these initiatives as well.
Absolutely. And something like what that could look like for a tangible example is if you advertise unlimited paid time off, that can be very ambiguous for people. It could be something that, really draws them into it, but at the same time, what does that actually look like? And so creating minimums, suggested amount, really allows people to sort of center around, okay, this is the norm, this is what's expected, I can do this and not feel any weirdness around it.
Great. Okay, so as we're sort of wrapping up, I do want to put in a quick plug for the Tech Ladies community. Our goal is to help companies build a diverse pipeline fast. And so you can source your team with us. We kind of have two ways that we support women in tech. And one is working and partnering with companies to help them gain access to the women that we support. So there's some stats about our community. I don't want to take the time to read through them, but we have a mix of people in various roles within tech. Um, and so we are happy to kind of partner with you and help source from our community. And then the other piece also is that we offer career development support and resources for women in tech so that we not only help develop the skills and professional development of women in tech, we also help our partner companies connect with our community. It's kind of a twofold approach. And that's my plug for Tech Ladies that I'll leave.
And so my quick plug for Diversio is, and the reason for our partnership right now is we're starting with both pieces. So Kelly and Tech Ladies are more focused on how you get these folks in the door. And then at Diversio, we're focused on how do you keep them? How do you retain them? And the easiest way to do that is to have actionable data. And so that's what we do. We collect information about inclusion, the experience of those employees that you've hired, and we make sure that you can either monitor how things are going or set goals to improve and focus on the areas that actually matter to your employee base rather than perhaps a more generic set of, oh, this is what we should be doing. Okay. Um, all right. So if anybody has any employee engagement or retention strategies that we didn't mention that you've seen work well, feel free to throw them in the chat. But I think we're gonna get to our Q&A now. Okay.
Okay, I see one of the first answers that I can hop on. It's kind of a coaching question. So from Ariana, she says, hello, I'm a talent and culture development professional with 7+ years of experience. I'm pursuing opportunities to break into the tech industry in the SF Bay area. Given the current dynamic job market, what advice would you offer to a job seeker looking to secure a position in this industry? Uh, it's a fantastic question. And I think you're right to point out the dynamic. I think it's a tricky time to be job searching in tech. It's not impossible by any means. But I think as a career coach, I could go off on a tangent. I've got to like rein myself in. But you don't want to make sure you get all of your building blocks in place. If that's like your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your branding materials. But then you want to go beyond that and you have to think creatively in the market. So whether that is going beyond the traditional job boards to looking more niche job boards, Tech Ladies has a job board specifically for women in tech. And it's great because all the positions are posted by our partner companies that have a commitment to hiring women in tech. But then beyond that, there's networking, which can be a crazy nebulous term, but it's just a matter of getting to know people in different communities. So joining a niche community, putting yourself out there, connecting with people for informational interviews. There's a lot to go through that I don't know if we have time for today, but my biggest piece would be to get creative. So niche job boards and connecting with people and not relying on traditional methods.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have another question around mentorship programs. My mentorship program is sponsored through my company. I'm in the first round mentorship program, and I think it's fantastic, but access to that is not necessarily open to any sort of company that's not part of the first round network. Kelly, do you have any experience with ones that are a little bit more, you can seek out on your own?
Yeah, I think there are external ones. We like at Tech Ladies, we don't necessarily have a mentorship program, but for our professional community, we facilitate one-on-one connections with people that often turn into almost like a mutually beneficial mentorship relationship. It might not always be titled as mentors, but even connecting with someone that has your same professional goals. So I think through our pro community, we have a program like that. Sorry, I'm stuttering on my words. But yeah, I'm not sure of any named outside ones outside of sponsored by companies.
Yeah. I think something important about mentorship is that there's mentorship and then there's sponsorship. And I know that sometimes mentorship can feel like it should be sponsorship, but those should be two different things. And so communities like Tech Ladies or like, any other that you might stumble upon are a really good opportunity to build those connections for that sponsorship piece. Yeah, like professional groups are a way to really connect with people that have similar interests, similar career goals as you, and ultimately you don't know what's going to come out of those, even virtual ones, just because that's a little bit the way that the world works now. You can always connect with somebody based off of mutual interest, and it can lead to something further down the line that gets a little bit more tangible and helpful for you or the other person.
Yeah, I would say kind of one of my professional mentors I met through cold outreach, which is intimidating and can be hard. But I essentially went on LinkedIn and I set a bunch of filters. So for someone that had something in common with me, because that's the easiest way to get someone's attention that you don't know yet. Like, hey, we went to the same school, or we made a similar career transition, or you are on the career trajectory that I hope to be on. I'd love to connect with you and pick your brain. Don't immediately ask them for mentorship, but then kind of establishing that authentic relationship that essentially leads into an organic mentorship without the formal structure and title.
Absolutely. And the worst thing that could happen is that somebody just won't answer you. And then, you're no better off than you were before. You're no worse off than you were before.
Good point. I like that.
Awesome. Any other questions from folks? Otherwise, I think we've hit our time here and we'll wrap up. Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I think Kate might have mentioned earlier that the recording will be shared. And so, yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Glad you were able
Thank
to
you.
sit and listen to us chat for an hour.